If you've got a question, throw your hand in the air, just holler at me, let me know, we'll stop and address it. I'm going to talk about mental preparation, basically a bunch of different aspects of it. We'll go over things like limitations, fear, visualization, and pain tolerance, which is a personal favorite of mine. And, so yeah, if you got any questions at any point, just holler and we'll address whatever your questions are. First, I'm going to start with talk about limitations. Everybody has some or perceives them. It's one thing we need to focus on and get rid of. To truly achieve at your highest potential as much as you're possible of achieving, you basically need to take a mindset, accept. Even like some of these things aren't hard. I wouldn't call them hard truths, but it's more of a philosophy. That if you adopt this philosophy, it'll have a lot to do with how much success you obtain and how you do things. Fans don't keep blowing those clothes on me. But basically the way I view limitations and what I would recommend how everyone else view them is basically there are none. There are no limits. And I mean that in an absolute sense, with 100%. Essentially, like any physical limit or any barrier, anything, there's always talk about what's the human body capable of, what's the most a person will ever bench or ever deadlift or ever squat. I don't believe there is a limit. If one guy does 1,000, the next guy's going to do 1,005, then 1,010, so on and so on. There are no limits. Eventually, someday, somebody's going to squat 2,000 pounds, deadlift 2,000, and bench 1,500. I mean, it'll happen. It's a matter of time. Same thing with any type of sprinting, distance events, all that. The records are always in progression. I mean, years ago, before Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, scientists said it was physically impossible, that no one would ever do it. Because of the limits of the human heart and the human lungs, it could not be done. Well, a short while later, guys did it. Then once one guy did it, a whole bunch of other people did it. So I believe that, like I said, in a real sense, there are no limitations. The only limitations are self-imposed, and they hold you back, and accepting the fact that there are none basically frees you to do anything. So it's basically, like I said, it's more of a philosophy, more of an outlook, but it's an attitude you need to adopt if you really plan to get to the highest levels and achieve everything that you're capable of. And all these limitations, like I said, like with the stuff I've just discussed, they're mental limitations. They're not physical. When you look at things like a lot of times records get stalled around significant barriers, or places where like one guy hits a really good lift that's far and above where everyone else is. Then in the next few years, people will get really close to that, but then no one surpasses it for a long length of time. Gary Heisey's deadlift record, I don't know how many of you guys have been around the sport long enough or remember Gary Heisey, but he held the deadlift record at 925, I think it was close to 2 decades. The record stayed there for a really long time. A handful of guys have broken 900, Gary pulled 925, stayed there for a really long time until all of a sudden you had Andy Bolton and a couple other guys chasing the deadlift record. All of a sudden they surpassed 925, the record went from 925 to 1,000 in the span of a few years. So after being stuck at one point for almost 2 decades, it increased 75 pounds in the next several years, all because you had several guys chasing it, all pushing each other, and every time one pulled more, there was a succession where every couple months it was getting pushed up another 10 or 20 pounds, and there was no change in the physical possibilities of anyone. It was a mental change. People saw that once one guy was breaking it, another guy could break it. They were fighting back and forth until they broke 1,000 and then stalled there again for a little while. But that's just examples of how these limitations are all mental, all psychological, not physiological. It's like a realization, once one person does something that's considered undoable, then other people realize it can be done and immediately start achieving the same thing. It's another reason why, like, the best thing you can do to get stronger is start training with people that are stronger. Find a group of training guys that are above where you're at, because it opens up what you deem possible, so easily and so vastly. Like if you're training in a small gym and you bench 400 pounds and you're the strongest guy there, you go there every day feeling good about what you've done, you feel some sense of satisfaction, and you think you've achieved a high level. If you go train in a serious gym, like with the guys that train here, or Westside, or Lexington, or a number of the other places, all of a sudden you're like the weakest guy in the gym. Do you think that 400 bench is any good anymore? No, and immediately your lifts are going to go up a ton, because now how you view it redefined what you see strength as, what you think is heavy, what you think is good, what you think is acceptable. And like I said, these things are all psychological, none of them are physiological. So it's all relative. It's all what you compare it to. So like if you're stuck at certain levels, the same thing. The other, like I said, one of the best things you can do is find a group of guys that are stronger than you and start training with them. Not only when you benefit just from being around all these bigger weights and seeing all this stuff done, of course they're also going to have more experience, more knowledge. You're going to learn a lot of other things. Also, start going to meets. If you want to get stronger, start going to meets. Start going to the biggest meets. Start going where the strongest guys are. If you're, say you're squatting 600, 700, 800 pounds, and you're doing that at local meets, you might be one of the strongest guys there. Go to some of the national level meets where everybody, when you get to the heavyweights, everyone's opening with over 1,000 pounds. All of a sudden, your 600-pound squat doesn't look so good anymore. And immediately, you start wanting bigger numbers. You start wanting to achieve more. You start seeing more as being possible. You stop seeing 700 or 800 as a good lift and start seeing 1100, 1200 as a good lift, and then you start seeing yourself being in that same position. Like I said, so it's all rearranging how you view things and redefining, what strength is. And the same kind of attitude applies to injuries, as well as goal setting and your training. You see a lot of guys, you'll see someone at the top of the sport suffer a major injury, never heard from again. And usually these are the type of guys who are genetically gifted or have come up very fast in their whatever career they follow. They haven't suffered through a lot of adversity. Everything's come easy, and they haven't had to struggle through difficult times before. So I've seen guys attempting world record squats, blow their knees out, and never be heard from again. Mentally, they can never get past that. They can't. Every time they get under a bar that's heavy, they feel like their knee's going to blow out. They worry about the same thing happening again, and they just can't get past it. But then you have other guys who blow stuff out left and right, and it seems like they're back in a matter of months, stronger than they ever were. Difference is, most of these guys have worked really hard. Things didn't come easy. They've suffered a lot of injuries in the past. They've overcome a lot of adversity. And to them, mentally, an injury is not a big deal. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a bump in the road. As soon as they get hurt, the first thing they're thinking about is, how can I recover as fast as possible? When's my next meet? When will I be ready to get back on the platform? Again, physiologically, there's no difference between these two guys. The only difference is mentally how they view it. One is, oh my God, this was a terrible, serious injury. I'll never be the same. I'll never be able to do the things I did before. Or the other guy says, this is nothing. It's just a bump in the road. And just that difference in viewing, how that is it makes all the difference. Another big thing about personal philosophies and how you view all this stuff that makes a huge difference is accepting that everything that happens or fails to happen to you is a direct result of your own actions. Now, whether this may be 100% true, like using myself as an example, I came down with cancer back in 2004. Now, that may not have been a direct result of anything I did, but how you can view things is whether or not it is truly a result of your own actions. You can't maybe not always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you react to it. And so whatever attitude, how you're going to deal with this adversity is always under your control. But if you just accept the idea that everything is affected by what you do or fail to do, it changes how you view everything, how you react to everything, and how you choose to deal with adversity. It'll make all the difference in how far you get down the road and how you overcome problems when you inevitably face them. Especially if you're somebody who's looking to get to the top of any sport, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be adversity, there's going to be problems, there's going to be difficulty. And the more times you face this, the more you overcome it, the more it reinforces that you can overcome it, and the easier it makes to face things in the future. Dave and Jeremy and some of the guys like to bust on me for all the injuries I've had, and how I beat myself up. But I've had, 3 surgeries recently. Torn, left calf, right quad, left lat, left tricep twice. Third one resulted in surgery, both biceps off. Right tricep, separated my left acromioclavicular joint, left pec tear, probably a couple more that I'm forgetting. But the thing is, what I'm saying, basically, to me, none of these mean anything. Every time I get injured, I just had surgery to reattach this tricep in January. Anytime I get injured, it's a bump in the road. I don't, it's not like I'm happy about it, like it's a good thing, but at the same time, it's not an issue. It's just, to me, it's just a delay, it's aggravating, but I never for 1 second think, oh, am I done? Is this the last time? Maybe I'm not gonna come back from this one. It's just, I view it as, it's just another bump in the road. It's a minor irritation. Let's get back in the gym, get after it, and get right back to, making gains. So it's just, like I said, and then there's, other guys who have one injury, it derails their entire career, but the only difference is basically all in how we view it, how I view it versus how they view it. It's totally a different philosophy and a different psychology. All right, fear. Who was the guy who was talking earlier about the high school kid? That was you. All right. He said what he was like having trouble getting under a certain number at the squat, or
well, that's when he fell under the 700-pound
so
squat.
Freaked him out.
But he got 675 or whatever.
675. He smoked 675, then went up to 700.
And it was just
Yeah, and then now every time 700 scares the crap out of him.
Same with me. Like first time I did a 3-bill log, I'm like, oh shit, this is heavy, and every bit of my training went out of my head.
Yeah, again, it's all psychological. The best way to overcome fear is to face it. If he's scared of it, and you do it in increments. Don't go throw 800 pounds on the bar and stand up with a gun to his head and make him get back underneath it. But although that might work, but that might be the quickest way to solve it. But the thing is, one thing you can rationalize it. Really, what's the difference between 675 and 700? It's so small percentage-wise, and in the big scheme of things with a squat, there's really no difference. You can rationalize it, break it down into percentages, look at it from a very rational, logical viewpoint. With a lot of people, that helps to say, well, gosh, you're right, this really doesn't mean crap. It's hardly any different. And then sometimes that makes them comfortable enough to go ahead and do it without. But if he's still scared, if it's become more of an